What are some of the common misconceptions that people have about stand-up?
I think the biggest misconception is that a stand-up is a status meeting. And as it devolves, that it's a status meeting to someone. It's a status meeting to a project manager, or it's a status meeting to a manager, or it's a status meeting to somebody, whereas software development is a team sport.
Should people really stand?
Nonetheless, they got together, everyone was standing, and at the end of every one of those meetings, he would announce the number of people who are at the stand-up and the number of minutes it took. And it was typically 15 people, 12 minutes.
Just a very quick thing before we get started. If you're new here, my name is Vidal, and you're listening to the Managers Club podcast, where I interview remarkable managers and inspiring leaders. We discuss how they got to where they are in order for you to learn about leadership and advance your career. In this video, we will cover tips and best practices for conducting effective stand-up meetings. Stand-up meetings, also known as daily scrums, are an effective and efficient way for teams to check in with one another to stay on track with their work. Whether you're a team lead or a team member, these tips will help you make the most of your stand-up meetings.
Good afternoon. Today I have with me my friend Ron Lichty. Ron is he's an Agile trainer, Interim VP of Engineering, author, good friend of mine. Welcome to Managers Club, Ron.
Yeah, thank you.
Ron, would you like to just say a little bit about your background?
I started as a programmer. I spent 7 years programming. I wrote a couple of books on programming. And then I got recruited by Apple Computer into my first management role, which is a management role for product management. So I actually switched both into product management and into managing. And then I got to manage the UX of the Macintosh Finder. And since then, so this was a couple of decades ago, since then I've both led as a director of engineering and a VP of engineering. 10 years ago, I pivoted my career to being a consultant, to parachuting in as a VP of engineering. I began training teams in Agile about 13 years ago and doing assessments of organizations and coaching engineering leaders. So I've done all that. And I wrote one of the very few books on managing software people and teams, which is Managing the Unmanageable: Rules, Tools, and Insights for Managing Software People and Teams.
Let's start. What are some of the common misconceptions that people have about stand-up?
I think the biggest misconception is that a stand-up is a status meeting. And as it devolves, that it's a status meeting to someone. It's a status meeting to a project manager, or it's a status meeting to a manager, or it's a status meeting to somebody, whereas software development is a team sport. And the goal of a stand-up is for our team to come together and ask the question, are we on track for the goals we've got? Scrum, we will have set up a Scrum goal or a sprint goal, and we'll have a sprint plan for our sprint. Are we on track on a daily basis? Are we on track to making our sprint goal and our sprint plan?
Do you only do stand-ups if you're doing like Scrum and sprints?
My career has passed from waterfall into Agile, and I've been in a number of organizations back when, where the transition to Agile and said, I don't know that we can do this or not, weren't really doing it very well, and went back to waterfall, but they kept doing stand-ups. And they kept doing stand-ups for a reason, that it's a team coming together. Now, one of the things we can find is that we can be just a whole group of people reporting to the same stand-up, or we can be an actual team that's working together for our team's goals and our product's goals. And those are two very different things. And there's a lot of it depends in stand-ups. So for example, there may be a group of people who in fact are a group of people. They're really not a team. They are a group of people who are all working on the same things. They might be doing customer support and there's this constant flow of things coming in from customers, and they're grabbing those and doing them. The rest of the team knowing what they're working on really is not relevant. And in fact, that kind of a team is probably going to use Kanban rather than Scrum, and they may not need a stand-up. Now, there also may be a team that's totally a team, and they do mod programming all the time. They do what's called mod programming, or sometimes ensemble programming, where the whole team has one monitor and they're all together looking at the same code and making and filling in and solving the coding problems all together. And they probably don't need a stand-up because they're in a stand-up all the time. So they're constantly interacting with each other on an ongoing basis. But the stand-up in Scrum was originally devised so that the team would come together and solve its problems as a team, as team members, and as a team.
I'm going to ask a couple questions. Maybe they'll sound like dumb questions, but like, how often should people have stand-ups? I've been at teams where they don't do them every day. They do them every other day or only Monday, Wednesday, Friday. What are your thoughts on how often?
So we didn't mention this in the intro, but I also co-author the study of product team performance. My co-authors and we've done, I think, 7 studies over the course of the last decade. And we put together a small survey to try to tease out what are our effective, what are high performance teams doing? What practices do high performance teams do? And so we asked people on product teams in every role, programmers and product managers and testers and project managers and just everybody in product teams all over the world. So thousands of people answer our surveys each time. And we asked them first, characterize your team. Is it a high performance team or a low performance team or something in between? And then we ask about specific practices. And we've got a data science member of our team who then looks for, are there correlations between any of those practices and teams that say, people who say, hey, I want a high performance team. What we found was stand-ups. We asked about how effective are your stand-ups and how frequent are they? And what we found is that people who said our stand-ups are ineffective, that people who said we don't do stand-ups, correlated with the lowest performance teams, correlated with those people who said we're on a low performance team. Just having an effective stand-up made you average. Having effective stand-ups that occurred every day was the most effective. So regularly actually gave you a little bit above average in performance. Doing them daily, effective stand-ups daily correlated with the highest performance teams. So what would I recommend? What I would recommend is what we saw coming back from that survey.
Okay. So it sounds like best is to do it every day. What time of the day?
And effective stand-ups.
Do an effective one. Okay. Let's go to that then. What differentiates an effective stand-up then from an ineffective stand-up?
Scrum suggests, and pretty much everybody suggests, that we limit stand-ups to be 15 minutes. Now, in the remote world, we're also getting together and maybe seeing each other once a day where we don't see each other once a day because we're remote from each other. So we may want to precede that with some social time. But the actual stand-up, the actual time that we are sharing with each other and coming together as a team to try to solve the team's problems, limiting that to 15 minutes. Now that goes off the rails in a couple of ways. One is the social is trying to mix in the social time, because one I did over the weekend. The other one is trying to solve our technical problems in that meeting. The goal is to identify those technical problems and to identify who can help to resolve those problems and who's interested in helping resolve those problems, and identifying when those people are going to get together to solve those problems. So we're looking for what do we have to solve in order to meet our goal?
Yeah, I've been at stand-ups where if someone has something like that, we'll create like a parking lot, right? We'll say at the end of the stand-up, if you want, we can talk about these things, but we're going to get through all the status stuff, right?
Yeah, I've seen the parking lot done. So at the end of the stand-up, there will be this meeting of these people, this meeting of these people, and this meeting of these people. They overlap. So this one will be the one at the end, and this one, and then we'll move into this one.
Yeah. So what's the best time of day for stand-up?
Yeah, really. So I'm not a fan of meetings. So I want to be really clear here. I am not a fan of meetings. I'm a fan of teamwork and teams coming together and making sure that teams are working as teams. Now, how do we minimize the interruptions? And so I'm a fan of focus. And focus for developers means getting long periods of time and not staccatoing them with interruptions. But if we're going to have interruptions, putting all those interruptions at the same time. So if lunch, if we're all in the same time zone, lunch is probably going to happen about the same time, and putting a stand-up right before or right after lunch might be a good time for us. We need as a team to identify what that best time for us is. And then if we're going to spin off meetings to solve technical problems, we want to spin them off right after that so that we don't staccato those through our day, the rest of our day either.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I agree. Like focus and not having interruptions. Most teams I've been on do the stand-ups in the morning, but I like your idea of doing it like around lunchtime. I was on a team where they did it like just before lunch, then everyone would go to lunch together. So that's kind of an interesting tip that you have. Who should run the stand-up meeting? Should it be the engineering manager, the tech lead? I've been on teams where they rotated. Who should run it?
So let's go to Scrum. Scrum has a Scrum Master and it has a dedicated role. No, it has a role of Scrum Master sometimes, which is dedicated.
Right.
The role of Scrum Master is one of facilitating the team, enabling the team, listening for impediments, and being willing to take impediments, being having the managerial courage to hear an impediment and being willing to walk into any office in the company to solve that impediment on behalf of the team. But at the same time, the goal of the Scrum Master is to get everyone on the team talking to each other, because the goal of the stand-up is for our team to come together as a team. So there's a rule of thumb that says that if I'm the Scrum Master and everyone's looking at me, I'm doing it wrong. I told this to a group of Scrum Masters I was consulting in Philadelphia with an entire organization. The CIO had brought me in, and I was the whole organization, not just software development, but the whole technical organization. And I was talking with the software development side and got together with all the Scrum Masters and shared that rule of thumb with them. If everyone's looking at me, I'm doing it wrong. And it was the coolest thing. One of the Scrum Masters was a woman and really short. And she said, "Oh yeah, when we're in a stand-up, I will sometimes try to find the tallest guy and stand behind him and see if anyone notices. And if no one notices, I know I've been successful." I thought, "Oh boy, you've got it. That's really great."
Wow. So then people they should be focusing on each other then, right? Like whoever the current speaker is.
Your goal is to share information with each other. Our goal is, are we on track for the goals that we've set for a sprint or for a project?
Okay, let's say you don't have a Scrum Master necessarily. You're not totally running Scrum or something, but you still have stand-ups. Any thoughts on who'd be the best person to lead that?
Think about the personality of someone who doesn't run the show. Remember, if everyone's looking at you, you're doing it wrong. Who is totally about enabling teams, who has the emotional intelligence to get people talking to each other and not to me. So we managers tend to have people talking to us. Project managers traditionally had people talking to us. This role is not about people talking to us. It's getting people talking to each other. So they're really good facilitators. They're also having this tremendous amount of managerial courage to grab an impediment and walk into the CEO's office if you have to get that impediment. So who is the best person to do that? Now, you know that those of us who are engineers, you've probably done Myers-Briggs. Most of us did a Myers-Briggs somewhere along the line. And what you may not know is that 70+% of us who are engineers are the same Myers-Briggs personality, INTJ. And the I stands for introverted. Introverted is not the natural personality for a Scrum Master.
So it sounds like it should be an engineer that's somewhat extroverted, and that it shouldn't be the engineering manager or the product manager.
Or a tester, but remember that if you have an engineer being the Scrum Master, or if you have a tester being the Scrum Master, what you're going to lose is a whole bunch of engineering if they're doing their job really effectively.
All right. Should people really, it's called the stand-up, should people really stand?
In a co-located situation, I would do that. I took on an interim VP engineering role for a startup in Portland, Oregon a few years ago. And their VP of engineering had taken a job down the street. They literally had only one manager left, and he was the QA manager, and he was acting as Scrum Master, and he was very good at this. And it was a large team, larger than I would recommend as a team because it had 15 to 17 people in it. But nonetheless, they got together. Everyone was standing. There were 3 or 4 remote members, and we had a big monitor for the remote members. It was a well set up conference room. And at the end every one of those meetings, he would announce the number of people who are at the stand-up and the number of minutes it took. And it was typically 15 people, 12 minutes.
Oh, interesting. He would announce like how long it took.
Yes.
Okay. So what, reinforce? So we're trying to keep it within 15 minutes. Like today we did it in 12 or 13. Like, good
12
job.
and a half, often enough, it'd be 12 and a half or 11 and a half, but yes.
Interesting. Okay. So at stand-ups, lots of times there's, and I'm not going to say it exactly correct, there's these three questions that people talk about, right? What did I accomplish yesterday? What's my goal for today? And what kind of blockers do I have? Okay. What do you think of those questions? Should people ask those questions or talk to me about that?
So I think that teams that are moving into stand-ups for the first time and that are coming together as teams, those are helpful questions to get to the larger question of how are we doing? Now, what I hear 99% of the time is, what did I do yesterday? And what am I doing today? And what's standing in my way? Now, however you phrase what's standing in my way, I'm a fan. We want to know what's blocking you. That's absolutely critical in any stand-up. That if you're blocked by something, you want to share that with the rest of the team and see if you can get unblocked. See if there's somebody in the room who can help unblock you. The first two, and I said 99% of the time, it's what did I do yesterday and what am I going to do today? And what I want to do is to nuance that a little bit and say, what did I accomplish yesterday against our sprint plan? What did I accomplish yesterday on behalf of our sprint plan? And what am I going to accomplish today on behalf of our sprint plan? So let me share what I too often also hear, which is, yesterday I worked on the subsystem and today I'm going to continue working on the subsystem. That doesn't give my team any information about how I'm doing. It doesn't give my team any information on the progress I'm making against our sprint plan and whether I'm on track against our sprint plan. So I accomplished this piece of the subsystem yesterday, and I'm going to, and my goal today is to accomplish this piece of the subsystem, and that's going to keep me on goal for what we planned out here for our. You also hear people say, I was in 4 corporate meetings yesterday. Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with this. What did you accomplish against our sprint plan? That's all the team needs to know. Team needs to know, what did you accomplish yesterday against our sprint plan? Is that what you needed to accomplish for our team to make it to its sprint goal? Not reasons you didn't, but what did you accomplish? So we're really coming together as a team, because and it's often enough in software development that we anticipate that this piece of the subsystem is going to take us a day or 2 days. And we get into it and we discover it's going to take us 5 days. Now we're not on track for our sprint plan. That's important for the team to know. And so the other thing is that the 3 questions tend to be very me focused. What did I accomplish yesterday? What am I going to accomplish today? And what's standing in my way? And what we really want to do is come together as a team. And one of the ways of doing that is if I hear you say, Vidal, that, hey, my piece, it's exploded. There's a ton of technical debt in there. I've got to pay down 5 days of technical debt before I even get to the 2 days of work that I anticipated here. And I can say, hey, I'm ahead of plan. For my part, I can help you out, Vidal. We can get together and work on this together, or we can swap, because I think I can solve that technical debt. So as a team, we're coming together. Now, the one additional thing that I coach teams to do at the end of every stand-up is to do a fist of 5. So fist of 5 is a technique in Scrum, and it's a response by everyone on the team to a question. And the response is somewhere between a fist, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 fingers. And the question in this case is, are we on track to make our sprint plan? So we're a Scrum team. Are we on track to make our sprint plan? We're totally on track to make our sprint plan. I think we're pretty on track to make our sprint plan. I don't think there's a chance in hell we're going to make our sprint plan.
Okay.
at voting. And what I'm looking for is fours and fives. And if anybody's saying a 3 or a 2 or a 1 or a fist, how could we adjust to get back on track to make our sprint plan? And maybe by, hey, Vidal, I can help you out. That I'm voting this because I heard Vidal say that he's got 5 days of technical debt he didn't expect. Hey, I can help. Sue says, hey, I can help. Sally says, hey, I can help. Now it looks like we might be back on track, and we can all vote a 4 or 5. We also may say, hey, everybody's underwater here and nobody can help Vidal out. And the result of that is that we need to pulse, is that we're not going to finish everything in our sprint plan. That's a signal to a product owner, who should also be in the stand up, that we need to take something out. And rather than randomly not finishing something, maybe we should choose which thing is going to have the least impact to pull out. And the person who's best situated to do that's our product owner. So we're going to signal to our product owner that we're not going to finish everything. Which thing should we not finish?
Got it. Oh, I think it's a really good idea. Yeah. Basically, at the end of the stand, you're basically checking with everyone. Like, are we on track? How confident are you that we're on track today?
It's a really quick check. Gets all eyes on the prize.
I think that's great. Okay. So now with remote work, the pandemic, working from home, things like that, a couple things I see. One, there's stand-ups, people want to do them over Slack. Okay. Let's just everybody do their stand-up updates over Slack. What do you think of that?
That's a great way to do a status meeting, but that's not the point of a stand-up.
So you don't see that doesn't work.
Stand-ups are about teams coming together and having conversations with each other about how we can adjust in order to deliver on our team's commitments.
So it's important. It feels important to have that conversation, right? Like someone says something.
Yep. I described a team earlier that was doing customer service work, and they were just grabbing things off of a backlog of stuff that customers were asking for. And there was no interaction between all of those people. There may not be a reason to have a stand up for that team. And just sharing what everyone's doing in Slack may be fine.
Is there any way like stand-ups can be made like more engaging or interactive? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's got to do with great Scrum masters helping teams, helping facilitate great teams. It's got to do with great teams, actually. It has nothing to do with Scrum masters, but that is the goal of a Scrum master, is to enable great teams. And great teams are enabled by teamwork, by respect, by trust. The thing that Google found when they studied their highest performance teams was psychological safety, which correlates with respect and trust. Those great teams, psychological safety, they said you can even observe psychological safety when you go into one of those teams. What you see is equality and conversational turn taking. There's no one who's silent and there's no one who dominates. There's equality in conversational turn taking. Each person has contributed to the conversation about equally. And when you see that, you're looking at a team that likely has psychological safety and likely has that respect and trust. And with that respect and trust, loves coming together to ask, do we have issues that we need to solve? Let's quickly find out whether we have those issues or not. And that team that is reaching that level of maturity may not use the 3 questions at all.
Okay. Do you have any other tips for people on how to run stand-up?
Create those great teams, create that psychological safety. For those of you who are managers, those of us who are managers, our objective has to be to create the levels of trust and respect among everyone on our teams, and that drives the psychological safety that has everyone on teams engaged with everyone else and loving to come together.
Yeah. So by that, I take it people feeling safe to report, I'm actually not on track.
Exactly.
Because if people aren't reporting honestly, then it's going to be very ineffective. Ron, you've been like super generous with your time. I really appreciate coming out to talk about stand-ups. Where can people reach out if they wanted to talk with you more about anything?
Yeah, well, so ronlichty.com, and our book has a website, managingtheunmanageable.net. So you can find me on either of those via either of those websites, and write to me at ronlichty.com.
I'll share those in the notes. Thanks again for coming on.
You bet. Hey, it's always fun to talk with you, Vidal.
It's always fun to talk with you, Ron.